Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about liver levels and the trend that I'm seeing with girls and women with Turner syndrome dealing with liver level issues, and what my theory is that might be connected to. So before I get into what I think is happening and why I feel like there's a pattern and a trend in this way, I want to tell my story of dealing with liver level issues. So if we rewind it back several years, I was on a generic birth control for my hormone replacement therapy, my HRT. And I've told the story a million times of my liver levels were through the roof, and particularly the part of the story that always gets me is my endocrinologist not listening to me. And then finding out later that the estrogen levels were through the roof and above and beyond what I needed. And that was why my stomach was hurting when I took them and I was having the effects I was. So that's a little brief history on that part, but the part of the story that I've only kind of touched on is the liver levels. So during that same time, I saw my GP and she ran some extra tests. We were trying to figure out some digestion problems I was having, and so we kind of just did a broad sweeping blood test and ran a bunch of numbers. And while I tested negative for celiac, I did have not insignificantly elevated liver levels. They were very, very surprising to me. I had never had any blood work ever be abnormal. I had not gotten into a routine of having my hormones tested before, so I hadn't seen how abnormal those were, though I kind of knew and assumed those were very abnormal. But we did start to try to troubleshoot what was going on. And I think the biggest aspect of this that made me catch on to this was my liver levels very, very closely patterned along when I changed my HRT medicine and what I was doing with that. So I first talked to my GP about that, about my liver levels, and she suggested change your diet. I had gallstones forming, all of these things that she was like, change your diet, that is going to help, and kind of just focused on that, and never once brought up the possibility of a connection to my birth control. So I did not red flag this as a possibility until I talked to my gynecologist and asked for a second opinion after my endocrinologist didn't listen to me. She looked at it, got this very shocked face, and said, yeah, that's way too high of estrogen. You don't need that much. And then I researched, and the amount of estrogen that I was on, the higher level, like way beyond what I needed, that I was on, can cause gallstones and can raise your liver levels. And when she switched me, I felt the difference, but then my GP ran numbers again. I can't remember how much longer after, but a while after I had switched my hormone medication, and ran the liver levels again. They were not the normal range still. They were slightly outside of it, but significantly closer to normal than before. And my gallstones were no longer a worry. They'd gone. And I had not, I maybe did try to focus on the diet changes a little bit, but honestly, I was not suspecting it had to do with my diet, so I didn't give it all I could with that. It was definitely not something I put effort into. So there wasn't significant change in that area. The biggest change was my HRT medicine. And now, in the Facebook groups I'm in, I'm seeing a huge trend of girls posting that they're having abnormal liver levels. And I want to share what I feel like is something we need to pay attention to. I'm not going to make any claims about what I think is causing it, or I'm not going to say for sure I know that this is for a fact what's happening, but I seriously believe this is something we need to pay attention to. And this is something we need to have more research on, with this being a huge treatment that is given to women with Turner syndrome. If I had just stayed on that medication, what damage could have been done to my liver if we hadn't seen those levels and we hadn't made changes? That part scared me. And in talking with my mom, she kind of had the same reaction. She very quickly saw the connection and was very concerned and wanted me off of that as quickly as I could, because clearly it was not a good option for me. And if there's other options available, that makes the most sense. So, I want to say there needs to be more research done onto the connection between birth controls and hormone treatments in general, like all the different options of hormone replacement therapy, in connection to how it affects our liver and how that can impact things. Because when you are putting some kind of medication into your body, it is processed out. Any extra that you don't need is processed out through your liver. That's literally the function of your liver, is to process out anything that your body is trying to deject. Like, it's your cleanup crew, your liver. It sorts out all of the toxins. So when you have extra of a medication, specifically in this scenario, it is where it gets hit the hardest. And that is how you know something is off, because the liver enzymes being elevated means the liver's having to work overtime. It's working extra hard to clean everything out. And that is a red flag to something isn't right. So, we need to be aware of that as women with Turner syndrome. We need to be our own advocate with that. And we really need to be having these conversations with our doctor about what impact it'll have on our liver, and making sure any treatment, whether it's the best one for us or not, making sure we know what that impact is. Again, this is me personally making the connection. I will say that over and over because it kind of is something I don't fully know how to process, because this should be something that is looked at. But it's a major concern for me when I'm seeing a bunch of girls having this pattern of having concerning or questionable liver levels and no other explanation for it. There's no explanation they can find. They don't know why, but it's weird. And again, I don't know the facts on the connection for sure. I can say what my experience was and the trend that I saw and what I particularly believe was my scenario, but it's going to be different for everybody. But I really think this is something we need to be paying attention to. Your liver is extremely important. Your liver is very, very important. And I know Turner syndrome can affect different things in a million different ways. You can have liver issues regardless of even being on HRT. Like, that can totally be something separate. I've always believed anything could be connected because it just affects so much. But when you see that trend, that makes you question. That makes you look at it a little closer and go, that's interesting. And it's just an area I would love to see more research on. I would love to hear more stories about. And me personally, I have ever since been much more diligent about making sure I was aware of that impact on me. Because I don't ever want to be unaware of an impact that a medication I'm taking is having on me, and that concern needing to be watched if there's a history of it being impacted. So I wanted to share this story a little closer, looking at the liver levels part of it, just because I'd always focused on be your own advocate. My endocrinologist kind of didn't listen to me, and I found out later that there was reason for me to question and be concerned. But there's also the being your own advocate in this other way, where it's like, know your blood work and know the impact that this could be having on your liver when we're taking medication on an everyday basis. Any medication you would want to do that with, but specifically in my experience, looking at the impact of our hormone replacement therapy medication, that is not something we can just say, oh, I choose not to do that as easily, right? Not all of us have that option to decide not to be on hormone replacement therapy for a million different reasons. So just for me, I felt like it was important to highlight that part of the story. I will link the other videos I've done talking about this. It's a whole thing that I went through that really opened my eyes, because I'd never had experiences like that before. But I feel like it was important and I needed that lesson, so I'm glad I went through it and learned. I just wanted to share that side of it, because I had kind of only briefly mentioned, oh, my liver levels are elevated. Oh, they're actually a little more normal now since changing, and not really fully fleshed out my thoughts on it. And I feel like, as somebody who wants to share all of the good information and my experiences with you guys, that's an important aspect of things, and something I don't know is being talked about very much, and I wanted to highlight it. So I hope that was helpful. Check out these other videos if you want to hear the full story on the kind of other side of it that I was mostly emotional and focused on, because that was mind-blowing to me. But I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in those videos.